today we're going to be having a chat about tips on how to become a design and build firm. So let's move on. So let me introduce myself first of all. I'm Adrian Wild. I'm the MD of HBXL. I was a property builder and developer for over 25 years, in which time I built around 300 extensions and 80 or so new homes. So the software was originally conceived to help me in that quest. Obviously a lot of work to be estimated and designed to achieve that. In terms of the HBXL software company, we've been around now for almost 14 years. We're a family-run business based in Bristol with over 12,000 customers and a wide portfolio of software now over and above the original estimating tool. We've now got CAD, estimating, health and safety expert, and contracts expert for generating your contracts. In addition, you can also link the software through to accounting systems to manage the actual business. Okay, so the agenda today, why design and build? What skills do I need to do this? How do I get started? And then a brief demonstration. Okay, so why would you consider design and building? Well, my own experience running a design and build company is that it does make running the business relatively straightforward. It puts you really in charge. It allows you to promote your business as a design and build service, which many clients will like. They like the idea of a one-stop shop rather than having to employ several people to actually manage their project. And that of itself keeps the competition at bay, because you will find that over time you will start to get inquiries where people are looking for this design and build service, and our research shows that there's only about 14% of builders actually offer this as a service. So that gives you a great start anyway. And when people choose you, obviously they are looking for that total service. Whereas if you are involved with architects who prepare the design, there's a very good chance that they will distribute those drawings to several builders, or if they give the drawings to the client, they will distribute it to 3, 4, 5 builders. And obviously all of that takes time and resource, because by definition you're not going to win all of that work. A subtlety with it also is that it gives you a proper chance to demonstrate your expertise. It gives you a chance to build a relationship with the client, whereas if you're just receiving drawings from the architect, you may make a site visit, but it's likely to be a fairly cursory visit rather than one where you actually engage with the client. You have a chance to build a relationship with them, understand what they're trying to get out of the project and so on. So the whole atmosphere around the relationship is entirely different. On the practical side, it allows you to design a building that's practical to build and cost effective. I'm sure we've all been in a situation where architects have provided a drawing which look great on paper but are sometimes challenging to build. They've probably got the architect's favoured materials in, which may be expensive or hard to fit, where your team have to understand how to fit these curious doors and windows from all corners of the earth. So of itself, that can really help the overall project, because your team will see the same sorts of details reoccurring, so the learning curves are a lot shorter. Of course, it allows you to charge for the design if you want to, and the stories of prices that we hear from architects for preparing plans are quite amazing. I think the most expensive one I came across was £25,000 for the design of a house. In fairness, it was a very good design, but it was still a lot of money for a design. For home extensions, we hear figures from £500 to £2,000. So, a good opportunity to either save the client some money or to charge for that work. And in fact, we have a number of builders who, as they've matured, as it were, they've moved into designing rather than building. So having worked with the client on the design and built a good relationship, it does provide an opportunity to creep your profit margins up slightly, we've found, because the client has the confidence in you, rather than it all being about price, because there are 4 or 5 builders all sticking in prices, many of which can be ill thought through and possibly cheap and make you look expensive. So if you can push all those clients to one side by providing a full service, then it can work very well. The other subtlety with it is that it does allow you to plan further ahead, because there is often the requirement for planning, building regs and so on. So there are good reasons for you to say to the client, we can normally not start the job for a number of weeks because of the design and planning process, and that gives you a chance to plan and optimize your own workforce. So lots of good reasons to design and build. Okay, so I guess many of the people who are attending today won't be architects. They may have had some design experience, perhaps at college, or maybe aren't using pencil and paper to do the odd design for clients. And clearly you have to only tackle work that you're experienced at. There's no point in you saying, well, I'm going to go and build an office block, when you've spent your life building home extensions. So if you've built a number of extensions, your experience in that is probably better than the architect himself. You know how this stuff fits together. So tackle the work that you feel comfortable building, and the design side will probably be second nature once you've done 1 or 2 jobs, particularly using our software, because it really professionalizes the way your software looks. Sorry, your designs look. For those of you of a nervous disposition, you may be saying, well, I'm not sure that I'm really I have the technical skills here. Well, that's okay. If you want to, you can always involve an architect as a sort of second round. Once you've submitted the drawings to the client and won the work, you can then submit it through an architect or an engineer to check out the design for building regs and structural aspects and so on. But of course, in these circumstances, they're working for you. You're not the other way around. You're calling the shots. So if you have an architect who's feeding you work, you can start to feed him work and sustain the relationship that you have with him. The other thing I would say is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel on your first few designs. You haven't got to design something that's particularly innovative. There are tens of thousands of very straightforward jobs being built, particularly in the extension world, every day. You've probably got a portfolio of half a dozen jobs that you tend to build all the time, rear extensions, 2-story extensions, extensions over garages. So it's not new. And as you gain confidence, or if you're perhaps doing a bit of your own in-house developing, you don't have to start with a blank screen to do the design. There are 1,001 designs online that you can import into the software, perhaps trace over, move walls around, change the roof lines and so on, and develop your own unique design. It's not rocket science, and have a go. You really have got nothing to lose and a lot to gain in terms of, say, designing practical jobs that you want to build. Okay, so you may say, well, that all sounds all fine and dandy, but how do I actually start? I'm not a CAD expert. I'm not particularly good with pencil and paper. Well, this is where Plans Express comes in. It is genuinely a very easy package to use. We have lots of builders who say, well, I've used some of the other mainstream packages, and whilst they're extraordinarily powerful, there is a very significant learning curve on them. Most people will end up going to college for a few months to learn how to use the software. And of course, the danger with those is that unless you're using them all the time, you may forget how to use all the commands. With Plans Express, as we're going to see, I'm going to design a simple job now, and you'll see just how easy it is to use. Sure, there is a learning curve, but it's measured in a day or two rather than months of learning. Of course, the other benefit is that if you combine the software with Estimator Express, the software will not only generate an estimate for you that you can give to your client, It will also generate a full set of building regs notes for submission to the building inspector. And we have many reports of clients saying, well, I don't understand the building regs really, but I've used the notes wizard, and either it's gone straight through with the building inspector, or he's come back with a couple of queries. We've adapted it and it's gone back in. And to be honest with you, that's no different from anybody else. 9 times out of 10, the building inspector will find 1 or 2 things to tweak. And that of itself is useful because it helps to strengthen your knowledge of the building regs. So don't be afraid of that side of it. Okay, so why Plans Express? Well, as I've said, it's extremely easy to use. It does provide this opportunity for design and build. Incidentally, while we're talking about it, many of our customers also use Plans Express to trace over existing drawings to generate estimates. So if you're doing design and build and building for others, you can use the software for those reasons. As we've said, it's another profit center. As you're going to see, you're going to have impressive 2D and 3D pictures to show your client, and it connects to Estimator Express using our XConnects technology. Incidentally, the XConnects technology goes beyond the connection between Plans and Estimator. It allows you to export data into Health and Safety Expert to generate all your risk assessments and all the other paperwork that you need to comply with the health and safety regs. And it also generates a binding contract if you export it into Contracts Expert. Many people say, well, I don't need a full-time contract, I don't need a proper contract, I can do it with a letter. Fine, many people get away with that, but there will come a day when some client decides he doesn't want to pay for some reason, and it's then that you will discover the value of a binding contract, because there are all sorts of reasons why the client can escape if you haven't drafted that contract properly. So it's a very cheap package, definitely worth having a look at, as is Health and Safety Expert when you compare it with the cost of health and safety advice. Estimator Express of itself will save an enormous amount of time once you've been through the learning curve. Again, there is a learning curve, of course. There is estimating is a complex process, and it's going to take you a few days to get your head around it. Your first estimate may well take longer than the later one, or what you're already doing at the moment. That's to be expected. Again, once you know how to use it, it's much more accurate than estimating manually. It avoids making mistakes, leaving stuff out. It is very simple, and a key feature of it is the links to Jewson, Travis, TradePoint, Screwfix, Keyline, and Builder Warehouse prices. And what that means is that from within the software, if you sign up for some of these accounts, you can press a button in the software and it pulls down today's prices of those products, along with any discounts that you have on the merchant system. So if you have an account with Jewson, for argument's sake, press the button and you have a set of accounts, set of terms, they will come down into your software. In addition, on the Jewson catalogue, for argument's sake, there's over 500,000 products. So at any time of day or night, you can go onto our website, onto the Jewson catalogue, and access all those prices. You don't have to wait until the morning to access the prices. Okay, so bit of a demonstration now of the scope of what the software can actually do. Now, I don't know how much you can make out on your screens. What I've got here is a drawing of a house that I built as a developer, and I think it was in about '95. And this was a pencil drawing that our technician did. We employed a technician who worked for us full-time, designing extensions and houses. I guess in today's terms, he was probably costing us 30 or 40,000 quid a year. So, a significant investment in order to keep the flow of work coming through the business. I think he would probably have spent 3 or 4 days designing and developing the drawing. Of course, design is not only just about putting lines on the paper, it is about thinking about it. So that's not to be unexpected. And again, if you bought a drawing like this from an architect, you'd be paying thousands of pounds, no doubt, depending on the architect. Could be one or two, it could be 3 or 4, who knows. That they will have a different structure. So I thought it would be rather fun as an exercise to trace over this house, which I did. It probably took me a couple of hours to trace over it because it's got some parapets and so on that were slightly challenging. But once I'd traced over those, the software would then automatically generate the elevations. And I'm going to be showing you live today how the software does that. And we're going to design a simple project in half an hour to show you how it actually works and develop the elevations. Dimensioning the drawing, again, very quick, probably 10 or 15 minutes work max to do that. But as well as all that information, the software has automatically developed a 3D graphic in sort of photorealistic quality. This is provided with the ultimate versions of the software, and I think you'll agree that when you present that to the client, it's a big difference to presenting them with a flat 2D drawing like that. There's the same house taken from the rear. That's the same house where within the photo visualizer I experimented with the color of the roof. And you can do all sorts of things to play with the design. You can drop on rendered finishes and so on to give your client different options. And again, I think if you show that to a client, they're going to be much more impressed than a flat drawing or a basic quotation. There's a 3D image of the plans. And again, I think you'll agree that communicates an awful lot more to the client than looking at a flat plan. And within the software, you can rotate it and move through the rooms, perhaps remove a wall here and there so that you can give a perspective on each room. So again, I think they will really add to the customer's experience of the service you can offer. Then as a bit of an exercise, I Google Street Viewed the actual development that we built, either side of the design in the middle. These are the houses that we actually built, and we merged the 3D image with it. Again, it took 5 or 10 minutes to do that, just playing around with the perspective on the camera. And I don't know whether you'll be able to see this via the web, I then applied some texture to it just to soften the image. And there again, I did it even further with a sort of watercolor effect. So having done your design, you know, by default, you have the opportunity to create brochures. I've actually done this image in PowerPoint. It hasn't been done on any sophisticated external package such as Photoshop. It's just been dropped into PowerPoint and played with. So most of you will have that software on your computers by default. You can also use the Google Street Map, take a couple of dimensions, and then in effect you've then got an accurate site survey, and you can then drop your design onto it. So all of these benefits just flow off the back of owning the Plans Express software. No additional expensive software is being used. Once you've created your drawing, you can then export it into Estimator Express, where you have an opportunity to define the specification, what are the bricks, the blocks, the roof tiles, and so on, and press a button, and depending on the size of the job, between 2 and 5 minutes later, you've then got a complete schedule of all the materials in the job. This particular view is an analysis of the job by different build phases, total costs. There's another report there showing the cost of the bricks and blocks and labour and so on. And there are literally hundreds of reports that you can produce from the software, and all of those are automatically generated once you've done your drawing. Here you can see we've got a lot more detail. And I'm going to show you how you actually generate this detail in the next few minutes. You can also, using the onboard Gantt chart system within Estimator Express, generate a planning chart, and that itself will generate things such as material schedules, order by dates, cash flow projections and so on. And again, all of that's really easy to use. You can learn how to use this Gantt chart system in 5 minutes. It's not Microsoft Project. It's much more straightforward to use than that, and ideally suited to housing or home extensions. Once you've got your estimate, again, you can then press another button and it will produce a detailed quote. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner here, you can see there's a 31-page quote that has been generated by the software. You probably can't see the detail on here, but don't worry about that. We're going to have a look at one in detail at the moment. But again, a huge amount of information is just automatically generated to fully advise your client what it is that's included in the job, and obviously it's worked out the cost of it for you. As we've said, you've got Health and Safety Expert, which can generate the health and safety information. And then finally, as we said, Contracts Expert is available. Okay, so that's the sort of scope of the software. What I'm now going to do is to show you a simple design so that you can see the tools that we have available in the software, so that you can start to appreciate that, yes, I think I could actually really learn how to use that. Okay, so I'm now going to go into Plans Express, and I've got a blank screen at this stage, and I'm going to create a new drawing. So I go new from template, and from there I can pick the size of paper, the scale that I want to work in. So I'm going to pick an A1 to 50 with title blocks, and you can create your own title block with your own company name and so on embedded in it. On the right hand side here you can see the 3D window that I'm going to briefly turn off while we start to do the drawing. And before I actually start to do the drawing, let me give you a quick guided tour of the scope of the software. So across the top you've got various toolbars. We've got the architectural toolbar where you'll spend most of your life working in it. It's not, we don't tend to use the other toolbars, but it's useful to know that they're there. We've got the drawing and annotation toolbar, and that allows you to do what I would call conventional CAD work, which is more like AutoCAD for drawing lines, circles, squares, and so on. There are a whole raft of non-estimated symbols. Now they tend to be things like pictures of trees and cars and people, but there's also a whole library of doors and windows that you can embellish the drawing with. There's an automatic sections generating toolbar. I'm not going to discuss that today because it's a 10 or 15 minute discussion within itself, but that will automatically generate all the sections for you, again with a simple click of the mouse. Modify and selection is a way of stretching and changing the design. So if you've, say, got a particular shaped extension, you want to reuse it, you can just stretch it rather than redrawing it from scratch. So a job that would take you 10 minutes to draw, you've reduced to 2 or 3 minutes. Within here you can also select objects on the drawing so that the software ignores them and doesn't estimate them when you export them. So you just pick a wall and mark it as non-estimated. The 3D menu allows you to create 3D images and also to draw elevations, and if you have the Ultimate edition of the software, export it to the photo visualizer, which generates those nice 3D images. Okay, so going back to the architectural menu, we've obviously got all the different elements: external walls, internal walls, doors and windows and so on. And within each of those elements there are a whole raft of different, in this case, external walls. We've got brick and block walls, we've got cavity block walls, we've got brick and ICF, insulated concrete walls, we've got brick and SIPS cavity walls, structurally insulated panels, we've got stone walls, we've got wall cladding, we've got timber frame, we've got wall starters, basement walls, retaining walls, multi-leaf brick walls for drawing things like garages, we've got brick piers, we've got garden walls. So virtually every type of wall that you can think of, there's a wall there for it. Similarly with internal walls, a whole raft of different walls. Internal, block walls, stud walls, metal stud and so on. Doors and windows, we've got loads of different things in there which you can place on the drawing. I'm going to show you how to do that. Same with windows, structural openings, loads of structural openings and fabricated steel, stairs, flooring systems, timber floors, concrete floors, basement floors, rafts and so on. Roofs, cut roofs, truss roofs, structurally insulated panel roofs, flat roofs. Again, we're going to see how those are actually placed on the drawing. Extending roof, that's creating a cat slide roof, as we called it in the Midlands. It seems to have a different name as I go around the country. That's where the roof extends from an upper floor and slides down to a lower ground floor, say. Attic, this will enable you to either do a brand new attic or to convert an existing roof. Again, because it's linked to Estimator, it does all the estimating for that. Domestic drainage, external works, whether that's lawns, paving, block pavers and so on. Electrics, all the typical internal electrics. Plumbing and heating, absolutely loads of stuff in here to place on the drawing. Numerous boilers and so on. Now, these three buttons here, plastering, decoration and renovation, they operate slightly differently in that, generally speaking, when you place a wall in Plans Express and ask the software to estimate it, it will do everything from first dig right the way through the plastering, the decorating on the wall. But of course there may be circumstances where you're doing a renovation job where you just want to plaster or you just want to paint a wall, and you can then draw the wall in the software and then ask the software just to paint and decorate it, to renovate it. So we look at the renovation tool set for argument's sake. You can see that we've got things like repointing, internal wall refurbs. That's one of my favorite tools actually, in that it does a whole raft of elements such as hacking a wall, replastering it, replacing the skirtings and cornice and dados and so on. So that's more about renovation than design and build, but it's useful to know that it's there within the system. Okay, so that's the scope of it. Let's actually start to do a drawing. So I'm going to start to do an external cavity brick wall. So as I'm going to do a bungalow on this occasion, just to demonstrate the principles because of the time limits that we have, I'm going to pick a 2550 single-story wall. Right, the software then goes away and picks up a dialog to help me design that. Now, if any of you have Estimator Express, you'll immediately be familiar with these dialogues because they're virtually the same dialogues that appear in Estimator Express. So I can define the location of the walls. Obviously they're the external walls. I can set the height, the thickness of the walls. I can set the depth of the foundation and the width. I can change any of these values as I go along. I can confirm whether I want to plank and strut the excavation. Incidentally, the items that are shown in yellow, these are the ones that actually appear on the drawing. The boxes in white are being captured to be exported to the estimating tool. If I click on these two icons down the bottom here and click into any cell, you'll see that it gives me advice about what the software is actually looking for. It's also put some additional labels on the screen. Okay, it's now asking me about the footings. Again, I can turn these labels on or off if I want. I can vary the height of the brickwork within the splash course and so on. But generally we've set these up to be standard building regs details. And then finally, I tell the software whether I want to plaster and skirt the walls and decorate them. Now again, because these boxes are all in white, they're being collected for the estimating tool and also for the specification tool. So I'm going to press finish, and I can now place items on the drawing. Now at this stage I can either place them manually, or I can press the arrow keys on my keyboard and actually enter the dimensions in manually. That's done that one wall. So let's say I want to come across the building 4,500. Maybe I've got a projection coming out on the front of my bungalow. Take that back in, 1,200. Go across, 450. And if I press S on my keyboard, it'll actually complete the overall shape of the bungalow. Now at this stage we can have a quick look at the 3D. So let's do that. And you can now see that we've got a 3D image of the house. Okay, so that's how I've done the external walls. Let's do the internal walls. So I'm going to do a block wall, 2550 single story again. Again, I can confirm the height. I can put my labels on if I'm not sure about anything. What's going on up here, for argument's sake? That's the height of the coursing blocks. I can set the depth of the foundation, the width, concrete thickness, and so on. I can confirm the height of the coursing blocks and so on. So again, it's all perfectly straightforward, and it's just a matter of checking the dialogue, confirming that you're happy with it. In this case, we've got two walls, two sides of the wall plastered and decorated, and a couple of skirting boards. I can then place this on the drawing. Now this time you can see the wall is actually not on the incorrect side of the wall. If I use the justification command, it then puts it on the correct side. So I'm going to take up there, and you can see it's found the perpendicular, and that's then drawn that wall. If I wanted to set out a wall from a corner, I can place it on the corner and press R on my keyboard and come down, say, 3,000 millimeters. Once I've done that, it then again finds the perpendicular and draws it in there. So, just as a bit of an exercise, I'll then place a bit of a corridor in here. So I use the same technique, R, press my arrow keys, 2,000, press F7 and place them up there. So I'm really just working quickly on this. It's not much of an architectural masterpiece, as you can see. I'll just place another couple of walls on here. I just missed that point there. If I want to, I can then move any wall if I'm playing around with the design. Program's running a little bit slowly because of the broadcasting software that we're using. Normally it's a bit more responsive than this. And again, we can have a look at the 3D preview to see whether we're happy with the basic design. Okay, as I say, I've probably not done the best job of this, but you get the general idea of it. We may look at this and think, well, that room's a bit long and narrow. We can actually use the modify command. If I find the stretch command, I can find that. Let's just close my 3D a second. I can say stretch that building by 1,000 to get a better shape. Refresh the drawing, and it just tidies up the corners. So you can see that if you've got an existing design, it's very straightforward to stretch it. Okay, moving quickly on now, we're going to place some doors and windows now. So I'll put the front door on it first. Confirm the width of and height of the door. Now these relate to a real world door. So when we fire this into Estimator Express, it's actually going to estimate the cost for it. So normally you wouldn't change those doors unless you were using a custom door. We can change things like the fixing centers so that it schedules all of the materials, all the fixings for fixing the door. We can set the depth. I wonder what's going on here. Let's put the help on again. That's the reveal depth, the depth of the frame as it will appear on the drawing. We can confirm that we want to plaster the reveals, whether we're plastering the sill or using a threshold board, and whether we've got any fixing centres and so on. Finally, we confirm whether the door is primed and stained and so on. In this case, because it's a traditional timber door, we're allowing for the door to be decorated. I can then place that on the drawing. By moving my mouse around, you can see it hands the door. And I can repeat the same process for the internal doors. Now, because we're in quite a hurry here, I'm just going to accept the defaults because they're probably pretty good anyway. And the software just allows me to place the drawings, place those as I go around very straightforwardly. Okay, and again, we can have a look at the 3D. See whether we're happy with the general layout. Okay, so some external doors. I've got a couple of bifolds on the back. They seem to be very popular at the moment. I'll accept the defaults for those. And some windows. And we'll put a bay window on the front. Again, I can vary things like the angle of the bay, the size of each of the facets, the height of the bay above the damp-proof course, the height of the window, and one or two other dimensions confirming the frame sizes. And finally confirm whether I'm putting a window board in there and plastering the ceiling and so on. Software automatically draws the bay, and while I think about it, I'm just going to pop the roof on. So it's a small cut roof for a bay, say 40-degree pitch. I'm just going to accept the defaults on that for the time being with a hipped roof. So that's done that. So I'll just now put the main roof on. I'll go through that in a bit more detail so you can see how that works. So I'm going to do a 40-degree cut roof. So I can confirm the pitch of the roof. Obviously these can be changed. I can set the soffit widths. I can define all the strapping details and ventilators and so on, because the software will schedule all of the timbers for that. 9 times out of 10 you'll be going along with the standards. I can define my rafter and joist centres, heights of the barge boards and so on. I can define my gutter bracket fixing centres. Maybe we'll change those, tighten those up a bit. I can define my tiling details. By default we have a clay tile in it, so this is all set up for that. And then finally I confirm whether I'm painting my faces and barge boards. Well, I know that by default we've got a plastic face here, so I'm going to set my decoration to no. Okay, the software then throws up a series of dialogues which allows me to choose the type of roof that I want to do. So we've got apex roofs, apex valley, and abutments where it butts up to an existing wall. We've got hip roofs, hip to both ends, valley hip, and a abutment hip. We've got barn hips or Suffolk roofs, depending on which part of the country you come from. And we've got lean-to and lean-to with a hip end. Now, essentially, you can Lego block any of these roof shapes together to give you probably 95% of the common roof shapes that you'll come across, and probably 100% of the roof shapes that you'd like to build. Because as a designer and builder, you can build things that are practical rather than look nice on an architectural plan. So I'm going to pick an apex roof to go on the main roof of my bungalow. Now, incidentally, at the bottom here, we've got what's called the command window, and you can see that it says indicate the wall line that a roof is on. This gives you a series of instructions for every entity that you place on the drawing. So I'm going to stand it on that wall, and it then asks me to define the first corner and the second corner of the roof across the gable, and then the length of the roof. And you can then see the red outline of the roof has been formed. Now, what you may also see here is that a dialog has popped up, and this is doing what we call daisy chaining. This allows you to, or it reminds you not to forget about crucial things in the design. What's the ceiling? What purlins do you want? What rainwater pipes, and so on. So we've only got about a quarter of an hour left to run now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip through that, and so we've got time to look at the estimating tool. But I hope you can see that you can place those sorts of things really quickly. So I'm just going to say no, I don't want to do any of those for the time being. And repeat the roof for the front projection. Again, I'm going to do an apex roof. Select the wall that the roof sits on. And then again on the command line, it says indicate the corner for the roof, either the third corner, or press T on your keyboard and click on the appropriate roof. And you can then see that it's formed the valley there. And again, it's doing this daisy chaining function, which again, I'm going to say no, I haven't got time to do that just now. Okay, so we've now got the basic outline of our bungalow or house, and we've probably spent, I think, about 10 minutes doing this. Obviously, it's not a refined design. In the real world, you're going to be spending an hour or two thinking about this, or, as we've said, tracing over an existing job that you think, yes, I want to do something like that, and adapting it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a look at the 3D again. Takes a little bit longer as it's building the 3D image. And you can see there we've got a full 3D graphic. So if you imagine that you're able to go back to your client with that quality of information straight away, I think that's a big difference between going back to them with a 1 or 2 page description. Okay. Now I'm going to quickly show you how the elevation tool works. So I've gone back to my 3D menu, clicked on the elevation. Again, looking at the command window, it says give the wall that you want to elevate. Give your observation point, i.e. where are you standing to look at the elevation. How far in the building are you looking? I'm looking at least in as far as the ridge and the extent of the elevation I want to draw. I can then position that, and you can see it's developed the elevation for us. I'll just show you that again. Rear elevation, stand at the back, draw as far as the ridge, extent of it, and then place it on the drawing. I want to make sure I align the damp-proof courses. The software does that, and then finally a side elevation. I want to go as far as that ridge, pick up the bay and so on, and I'll just place that over there. So again, you can see in a quarter of an hour we've done a very simple job, including the elevations. Just very briefly to show you the dimension tool, click on any wall, press the middle button, press dimension, and the software automatically generates the elevation. The software actually works quicker than this when you're not connected and broadcasting over the internet. It's getting it a bit confused with the internet there. So I hope you can see that in a few minutes you can dimension the entire building. Internal walls are exactly the same, using the same process. Just choose the wall, middle click, and place your dimensions. Okay, so the other thing that's perhaps briefly worth showing you is the wall detailing. So in this case I'm going to put some sills under my windows. So I choose the sill. I can then place that on the drawing. And as a little exercise, I'll just show you how to do a soldier course. And there you have. So, as you can see, within a very short space of time, you can develop attractive looking drawings. Over here, you can also see that there are notes pickers to place on the drawing, names of elevations and so on. And you can also use the tools that are embedded in Estimator Express to automatically generate a whole series of notes that you can either drag onto the drawing or you can just print out as an A4 set of notes ready to go on there. So we've only got 10 minutes left now, so I'm going to very briefly save this drawing. Give it a name. You can still do daft things with your capitals. Bungalow number 1, and save that. Okay. I'm now going to flick into Estimator Express. So here we are in the Estimator Express tool set. So just at the risk of stating the obvious here, we've actually got two software packages. We've got Plans Express and we've got Estimator Express. You can just buy Plans Express if you want to and just do a design service, or you can just use Estimator Express on its own to do estimating. But where the software really takes off is where you get the software from the information from Plans to talk to Estimator, and it does all the input for you in effect. Okay, so before I very quickly do the import, I'm going to show you under the bonnet so you've got some sense of how the software works. So I'm going into My Settings. We can then look at My Price Book. It's taking a minute to load because of the software that we've got running on the system. And you can run multiple price books. I was down in the southeast the other day, and they asked me could they run multiple price books, because in some areas you may have different prices for labour in different areas. In this case, if they were working in Wimbledon or Chelsea, clearly their labour costs were going to be different. So if we open up the price book, you can see that it's divided into several sections: labour, material and plant, and so on. I'm going to go into the labour section, and here you get an opportunity to input your hourly rates. This is really important because, as we've just saying, hourly rates can differ dramatically between areas of the country, or indeed particular gangs. You may have one gang that works very cheaply and one that's expensive for better quality work. So spend a couple of minutes going through that and changing that to reflect the rate that you are paying. That's absolutely crucial. Same with plant. You need to spend a few minutes going through that and tweaking the plant rates. In terms of the materials, as we were saying, They can be imported from a variety of merchants. So you can see in this one, for argument's sake, we've got a lot of juice and material, build a warehouse, which is a set of negotiated products, and we've also created one or two of our own products, as I've been demonstrating. Bloggs is the famous building materials supplier, Selco, some people were using Selco, and once you've created your supplier, you can add your own materials within it. So you're not strapped to the material set that we've got. Moving quickly on, because we have so little time, you can then go into the specifications. Again, we set up different specifications for different areas in this particular, we could choose different price books for the different specs. I'm going to choose my master price book again. And here in the specification library, you can see that by default we have a number of specifications set up for different jobs, for different specifications. So I'm going to go for the new build Part L spec. The software has been updated to take that into account. And what that allows you to do is to set up your own default material for each element within the job. So in this case, we're in the cavity wall spec, and if for argument's sake we looked at the bricks above DPC, I can just turn a label on here to help us see that. The bricks above DPC, by default we've got 40p allowed in there. If I wanted to, I could jump to the price book and I could choose, say, a more expensive brick to add to it. So you can now see that I've got a 60p brick in there. The bricks are 60p each, as you can see. They're part of the brickwork shell that attaches the information to the Gantt chart. 60 bricks times 60p is £36 a square metre. So every element in the job is set up in that way. Similarly with the labour, we have a 2-on-1 gang there. You may recall I just changed their price to £70 an hour. By default, to lay a square metre of blockwork, we say it takes 0.2 of an hour, so they're in at £14 a square metre. So every element in the job is specified and estimated automatically by the software. You can set your own profit margins, and I would suggest that that is set at 30 or 35%. I'm doing a demo tomorrow about improving your profit margins, and it's quite clear to me that many builds don't set their margins high enough to cover their overhead. So join me tomorrow if you're interested in that. Workbooks, those are all the calculators that do the work and do the estimating. There's a workbook for every CAD entity that we had in the other software. So every time you place something on the software, it estimates it for you. We haven't got time to look at those today, but we may see them in the estimator, in the estimate we're going to do. Okay, so I'm now going to create the estimate. So I give the job a name and a description, and I import the job. So there you can see bungalow 1 that we did at 12:21, 6 minutes ago. I can bring that in there. You can then see a little thumbnail of the bungalow, so you know you've got the right drawing. Press next, choose the price book with my £70 material in there and my other elements. Choose the specification. I'm going to pick the Part L new build spec. That's got my new 60p bricks in. I pick the Gantt chart, the planning chart for the job that I'm doing and when I'm going to start it. So I'm going to start that in January 2015 on the 12th. It's a bungalow. And put the customer's name in. That used to be my old stomping ground, Leicestershire. That's where I built all my building projects. Set the profit margin at whatever rate you're comfortable with. Set your rate of inflation. What this will do is automatically build in an element of inflation for the job based on the Gantt chart that you've just created for the estimate. So the program will now go away and pull in all the geometry from the CAD system. So it's going to bring in only the elements we've laid out, obviously the external walls, internal doors and walls, external doors and windows, roof and bay and so on. At the moment, you've probably noticed we didn't have time to put the slab in or lay out the drains, but all of those elements could have been placed on the drawing, both from a design perspective and also from an estimating perspective. Clearly, it's going to take a little bit longer than a quarter of an hour to do, but hopefully it's going to give you a good idea of what the software will do. So it's pulling in the geometry of those elements. It's looking up the latest price book, and in the ordinary way we would have refreshed that price, all those prices from the web with a single mouse click. That normally takes a couple of minutes. So you know you've got your live pricing from, say, Jewson's. You know that you've tweaked the labour rates to reflect your world, the same with the plant. You've picked the specification, the new Part L spec, so that you know that you are devising a job that is to the current building reg specification, and the software is doing the rest for you. So you can see there it's starting to pull in the information. It's done the front door and the walls and so on. I'm just going to take a breather for 1 second. So a big house will probably take 3 or 4 minutes to import. This little job, as you can see, is probably going to take us a couple of minutes. And that's the sort of time scale that you would expect if we were doing a home extension. Incidentally, for those of you who are involved in home extensions, it can be used in exactly the same way. You can survey the existing house. You can mark it as existing, as we saw with the modification tools, and then draw your extension on the back. The software will then only import the quantities relating to the new build. It'll ignore the existing house. Okay, you can now see that the software has completed the import, and it's asking us for a little bit of information from the software. We need to define the soldier course, for argument's sake. What sort of brick do we want to use on that? I'm going to ignore that for the purposes of this. And if we have a quick look inside the estimate, let's say the brick and block cavity walls, you can see we've got that cost for them. The software has imported all of those walls directly into the software. It's picked up all the geometry. It's done some calculations, and it's then associated each of those areas, lengths and volumes with the different elements within the job. So for argument's sake, you can see those 60p facing bricks. There's 123 square meters of those. If we go to another view on the software and look at those same bricks, there's those bricks at 60p each, £36 a square meter plus wastage. The software automatically adds that in. 123 square meters, £4,450 plus wastage. So there's a budget of £4,784, and the software is telling us, including waste, that we need 7,974 bricks for that little bungalow. That sounds about right, doesn't it? If you'd asked me to guess it, I'd have said there was about 8,000, so clearly the software's in the right ballpark. Similarly, brickwork above DPC, there's the labour rates. It takes 0.6 of an hour to lay a square metre of bricks, £42 a square metre. Same area of bricks and a budget for doing that. And the software has done that for each and every element within the estimate. Okay, now in terms of the creating your specification for the job or your quote for your client, it's simply a question of asking the software to generate a quote for you. So I'm going to ask it to do a quote by build phase. That means the software will break it down phase by phase. What are the costs of the foundations, walls, roof and so on. I can ask the software to give me as much or as little detail as I like. I can ask it to give me just basic details, such as in the case of the footings, a brief description, what is the price, or key resources, which is materials. I can ask it to put quantities in if I want to or not, or I can ask the software to tell me all the labour and all the plant. Most people will go for a key resource with or without quantities. I'm going to put the quantities in quickly for this exercise, press print, set the rate of VAT, there's no VAT on this new build, click OK, and the software will generate the quote for you. See, it's building the items for you. So it's merging all the information from all the different elements of the job to give you your quote. Now you can embed this on your own letterhead, or you can design your own letterhead within the software, and it will automatically print that together. You can devise your own letterhead, your own opening letter for it. By default, we've got a standard letter. I'll just enlarge this for you. So you can see there we've got a detailed letter from you to the client, and then the software, let's just blow that up a bit more for you, breaks the job down by phase. So the foundations, there's 10 cubic meters of concrete in the external walls, 4.6 in the inner walls. You see the specification that's been allowed. So at this stage, you can check the spec that the software is automatically recommended, and if necessary, tweak it back in the estimate itself. There's the cost of the footings. If we go to the brickwork shell, you can see there the bricks above DPC. It's picked up those 60p bricks that we put in there, the 7,418 excluding the wastage. And it's done this for every phase of the job. You can see there's 14 pages. So you've got your brickwork shell all described. It's picking up things like the damp-proof courses, the combination lintels, dummy frames, cavity closers. It's picking up the abutments for the small roof on the little bay at the front. It's put in the vertical DPC and combination lintel for the bifold. So everything is merged together appropriately. There's all the roof structure. There's some assumed timber sizes which you can change. Joinery first fix. You've got your door casings and window boards being fitted. Plastering I always think is quite interesting because you can see it's picked up the brick and block walls, the front doors, block walls, windows and so on. Joinery second fix, internal decoration. So if you just cast your mind back here, by simply drawing a few lines on the CAD system in what did it take us, quarter of an hour, it's generated all of this information for this job here. So you can see that it can dramatically transform the way that you approach your jobs. It really puts you in the driving seat, both in terms of design, in terms of budgeting, in terms of overall professionalism. So I think by the look of it, I've overrun today's session. I don't know whether any of you have got any brief questions that you'd like to ask. I'm happy to take any questions. And if not, we'll close the event. So if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, there's an opportunity to type in questions into the dialogue. While you're doing that, I'll just nip back into the CAD drawing, and I'll remind you of the 3D that you've got automatically generated. Hi, Chris. Chris is typing a question for us. Does the software pick up the best price by product? No, it doesn't. It doesn't do that. Basically because we work with a number of suppliers who provide us with live product data. If we were to do that, they probably wouldn't want to supply the information because it would tend to create a meltdown situation. However, we do have a component within the software that allows you to specify your preferred supplier. So if, for argument's sake, you're using, say, Jewson, Travis and Build a Warehouse, and you know that by default Jewson's have got the best timber prices or the best paint prices or so on, you can nominate the software to use those by default. So it isn't actually doing an analysis of it, but it is allowing you to automatically assign it to your favorite product for a particular supplier. I hope that makes sense. So same question from Chris there, you've got multiple suppliers. Got a question here from Mike Simmons. He's got a number of questions. Can he answer them by phone? Yes, of course. Probably the best thing, at the end of this presentation, I think I've got a slide that shows some phone numbers. If you'd like to ring on that number, hopefully one of our sales guys will be able to take your question. If you've got specific questions for me, just ask them to refer them to me and I'll get that sorted. Okay. It looks as though on my particular presentation here I haven't got the phone number, so I'm going to see if I can load another one for you that I know has got the details on it. So sorry about that, I should have had those provided. So if you'd like to give the sales number a call, or indeed call the support number, they'll be able to give you a very sort of technical blow-by-blow account of any particular questions that you've got. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to sign off now. Thanks very much for listening. If you've got any final comments in terms of whether you thought the event was useful, please let us know. It's always good to get feedback. So I'm going to sign off the session now. Thank you very much indeed for coming today.